In the mid-20th century, a wealthy Belgian industrialist was vacationing in Saint-Raphael, a luxury resort town in the south of France. He was a man who spent his life analyzing contracts and bank statements. He prided himself on hard logic. Wandering through a hotel lobby, he spotted a small, intricately carved ivory jar sitting on dark velvet. The price tag read 75,000 francs. He laughed. It was an absurd number, and he started to walk away. The seller didn't chase him. Instead, he simply dropped his voice and mentioned that the piece belonged to an aristocrat who desperately needed to quietly cover her children's tuition. He made the jar feel less like merchandise and more like a high society secret. A week later, the seller arrived at the industrialist's private home. After some fierce haggling, the seller pretended to call the noblewoman and agreed to let the piece go for 40,000 francs. The industrialist handed over the cash. By knocking the price down nearly in half, the industrialist felt completely in control of the room. He believed his sharp negotiating skills had won him a bargain, completely missing the fact that the hook was already set. A few days later, a traveling carpet salesman knocked on his door. The industrialist had turned this man away before, but this time the salesman stopped mid-sentence, staring at the newly purchased ivory jar in the display cabinet. The salesman heaped praise on the piece. He told the industrialist he clearly had an exceptional eye for antiques, and casually suggested bringing by a friend, a professional art appraiser, to properly evaluate it. The expert arrived shortly after, wearing a sharp suit and speaking with quiet authority. He examined the jar closely and declared its true market value was easily around 110,000 francs. To prove he wasn't offering empty flattery, the expert offered to buy the jar right then and there. He counted out 78,000 francs in cash directly onto the table. The industrialist had just nearly doubled his money with zero effort. The physical friction of those banknotes sliding across the table bypassed his lifelong business caution and triggered a rush of pure greed. Eager to replicate that high, the industrialist tracked down the original seller. He immediately purchased a new batch of jade and ivory pieces, spending 400,000 francs without hesitation. The expert appraiser returned. He studied the new haul and valued it at 1.38 million francs. He specifically singled out a 35-centimeter carved jade Buddha as a masterwork. Once again, the expert put down cash, 450,000 francs for the Buddha alone. In a single transaction, the industrialist had covered his entire 400,000 franc investment and pocketed 50,000 in pure profit. All doubt vanished. With the trap fully primed, the scammers delivered the final pitch. They told him about a 20-piece inheritance collection, rare jade and ivory, available for 5 million francs. The expert guaranteed he could flip the lot for 17 million. The industrialist didn't bother calculating risk anymore. He was entirely convinced that his brilliant, newly discovered talent for the antiquities market was about to secure him a massive fortune. Inside a prominent bank in Belgium, the industrialist handed over 5 million francs in cash to the supposed art collector. Standing in that marble lobby, he felt he was stepping into an elite circle of wealth. He took the collection home and waited for his buyers to arrange the 17 million franc flip. Days passed, then weeks. The phone stayed completely silent. The appraiser, the seller, and the carpet salesman had vanished. Desperate, he finally hired a legitimate, independent appraiser. The truth was immediate. The pieces were recent, mass-produced fakes from an industrial workshop. The entire 20-piece collection was worth barely 150,000 francs. The financial blow was devastating, but it paled in comparison to realizing what actually happened. The tough, rational businessman realized every single person in the chain was a paid actor, reading from a script, and he had willingly played his part perfectly. When authorities finally started pulling on the threads, they found hundreds of similar cases. Wealthy doctors, corporate executives, and even established writers had quietly drained their accounts to buy worthless trinkets. The syndicate relied on the victims keeping themselves quiet. Many swallowed the losses to avoid public humiliation or awkward questions from tax authorities regarding unrecorded cash withdrawals. And for those who did try to go to the police, the scammers would make polite, untraceable phone calls, gently mentioning the exact time their young children finished school. The perpetrators mostly slipped away. They took their profits, loaded up high-end vehicles, and simply drove to the next sunny coastal city to set up the exact same theater all over again. The most effective confidence games rarely rely on force or heavy pressure. They succeed because they figure out exactly what you want to believe about yourself, and then they let your own ego do the heavy lifting.